And I told Evelyn she can share this video too, so if you don't catch something, it'll be ready. So I study aquatic entomology and mercury in the water, and so that's how I got into fly fishing. But when I first started, I had a box that looked something like this that my dad handed down to me, and I was instantly intimidated because I had no idea what any of that meant. So that's why I wanted to do a presentation like this, because I think when you first are looking at a box, you can get intimidated. So I'll talk a little bit about the evolution and science of it, and then we'll talk about insect orders, how to identify them in the field, but also how to match them to a fly in your box. Yeah, and a few strategies of how to match the hatch. Like I said, at any time, feel free to ask questions. So this is an evolutionary tree, but don't get overwhelmed. The top is 400 million years ago to 100 million years ago. So the later it is back here. And basically all this is all different orders of insects. The red are the lines that have a aquatic phase of their life. So the fully aquatic are 5 orders, and those are the 5 orders that I'm going to talk about. And they're also the main orders that we fish. So if you think about, I'm sorry, it's kind of small, but Ephemeroptera at the top is the mayflies. That's the very first red line. So you can see that line goes all the way back. That means they're the oldest of the insects we're going to talk about. As you get closer to where the nodes break off, that means they're more earlier or recently evolved. Does that make sense?
Broken red line mean?
That means they have a partial aquatic stage. So, for instance, Lepidoptera, which is moth and butterflies, their larvae will be in the water, but then they have a stage where they're actually on land before they're adults.
Before they hatch?
Yeah, some of them,
Yeah.
and some not. Yep.
So they hatch on land?
Yep, so some of the species will hatch on land, and some of them will hatch in the water, and so that's what the semi...
That's the distinction between fully and semi?
Yes. Yep. So it's interesting because scientists still don't know how the evolution of aquatic insects came about. There's actually 2 hypotheses. There's a marine ancestor, and there's also a freshwater ancestor. And the reason being is because most of them are soft-bodied insects, and so they didn't preserve into fossils, so they can't look back and say, where did these actually come from, and what do they relate to? So, very simply, you can see, a hypothesis 2 says that crabs came into freshwater, they walked up, came up into freshwater, into field shrimp, evolved. Insects then went on land and went secondary back into freshwater. That's one idea. There's also another idea that they went right from marine to land into aquatics, into freshwater. And so the schematic that I'm kind of going to go through this is talk about orders. So that's your mayflies, your dragonflies, your caddisflies, stoneflies, and true flies, or midges. So the order is going to be in red as we go through this, and this is kind of going to be our structure as we go through the whole talk. So Kingdom Animalia, that's what we're all in. Phylum Arthropoda means you have an exoskeleton and jointed legs. This is your crabs, your spiders, your insects, and then Insecta is when you have 6 legs as an adult. So as we go into order, we'll first start with Ephemeroptera, which is mayflies and dragonflies. And also damselflies. I'm just biased with the dragonflies. And so these are hemimetabolous life cycles, which means that these orders will go from egg and then a series of nymphs, growth inside the water, and then they will crawl up on land and they'll become an emergent adult and fly. So that's kind of how their life cycle works. We'll talk about another life cycle later, but just keep that in mind for these elder insects. So if you're thinking back on that evolutionary tree, these are older insects. They have a more simplistic lifestyle like this. Yes, no?
For the example there for your instars,
yeah.
So you like from your first larval stage to your almost hatching, how long of a lifespan is that roughly?
Yeah, so it's dependent on the, for instance, for mayflies, it can be anywhere from a year to 2 years, I believe. Mayflies, Dragonflies can be anywhere up to 6 years in the aquatic stage. Most times they have like an exponential growth. So these smaller instars, they could have up to 8 instars or molts. So the smaller, they'll molt a whole bunch in that first year, and then they'll kind of take their time with the rest of the 3-4 years that they have. So it's all dependent on the order.
And then the fish will eat the eggs, right?
They will, yeah, sometimes. So like that's for that's an example of a big mass of eggs.
Yeah.
So some of them will lay like that, kind of like similar to frog eggs, where they're all kind of in a mass like that. And they will eat them, but most times they're looking for the nymphs. Yeah.
When you're talking about mayflies, what's the most, like, that's a general term, right?
Yeah.
So what are the most common flies that you see around?
Okay. So that is.
Can you repeat the question?
So like mayflies is a general term, and so what are the more specific names that we're going to see around here of mayflies? And that will. I'm going to go through the mayflies first, and if I don't answer your question, then we'll revisit it for you. If that makes sense.
So the instars those are the different as they molt into a larger. Those are just different sizes.
Yeah, so it's basically they're shedding their skin, they're shedding their exoskeleton, and they're growing a little bit bigger each time, and that's termed as an instar. It's dependent. Yeah.
Just like a lobster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So it's a common trait for the class or for phylum Arthropoda to shed that exoskeleton. So we'll start with the mayflies since they're the oldest. The order name, so like I said, we'll go through 5 orders. The order name for mayflies is Ephemeroptera. And the Greek word ephemeros actually means lasting for a day. And this is because that adult stage can last anywhere between 37 minutes is the quickest adult stage, anywhere to 24 hours, and then I believe a few months, maybe 3 months is the eldest. So it's a wide span, and there's many species that's why I think it's hard for me to answer your question, because there's many species that you can have here. But they're the eldest aquatic insects, and they're the first insect thought to have wings, ever. And so they are thinking this because these are all gills that are on the abdomen that come off, and they think that they're modified gills. So these gills are moving in the water, and they're aerating, and they're catching oxygen. And eventually they build up their muscles in the back that they actually can, when they start to emerge, they can start to use them as wings, and they get these muscles. So that's the thought. But they were the first insects to have wings.
Is that true?
That's a hypothesis. That's the most common. That's not my hypothesis.
No, that's pretty cool.
That's the most common hypothesis.
Yeah.
So they have those big lobe gills. And so if you're ever looking in the field and you flip over a rock and you want to know if it's a mayfly or not, you'll look for the biggest telltale is the 3 cerci or the 3 tails at the end. So if you think of 3 tails, you flip 3 upside down, you get M for mayfly. So that's an easy way that I remember that. 3 tails, mayfly. And they usually have gills on their abdomen, like I showed you. And if you look under a microscope, they have 1 tarsal claw, compared to some of them have more claws.
What about Quill Gordon that has 2 tails? Do they have 3 as a nymph?
Do they? They should all nymphs should have 3 tails, no matter what. It's a telltale sign if that's a.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
The 2 tails will be a stonefly. Yeah. So this is the life cycle of mayflies. It goes from egg to nymph to subimago to imago, and I'll translate those into angler terms. But so this I just made up. It's the same picture as that, but then it has the numbers correlate with the fly that matches with the life stage. I'll have this for every order that we go through. So if you want to just pass it around, just take a look. But we'll go through some examples up here as well. So basically you have eggs that are dropping down, you have the nymph that's doing those series of instars, you have the emerger that's coming up into a dun. So a dun is the sub-imago stage. This is the only aquatic order that has a molting adult stage. So that dun will go up into a tree or a nearby area, molt into another adult, and the reason why is because they have better wings. And I'm going on tangents, I'm sorry. And so then the spinner is what actually lays the eggs, or the imago is what actually lays the eggs. Sub-imago is the dun, imago is the spinner. And again, this is just a different way to show the life cycle. If you look at kind of more of the outline, that's what I want you to take away from that. The outline is what you want to look for when you're using your flies, so when you're trying to match your fly. So the emerger, for example, will kind of come up to the surface and it'll dry out its back cuticle area, and it'll crack open there, and that's a really vulnerable time for fish. So if you ever fish emergers, it's a great pattern. And then the dry fly, which is your dun, very common. I'm sure everyone has seen a picture like that, or probably the most charismatic life stage of the animal of fly fishing. And then a spinner at the end, already done laying eggs, dead on the water. So those are some flies that match. Like I said again, I think the most important thing of this is looking at the outline of how that animal looks and size you'll want to look for. But then you'll match it down to the nymph of the fly. Also, if anyone wants this PowerPoint when I'm done, I'm happy to share it. So. Yes.
So you have to randomly photograph each slide?
No, yeah. Wow. That's fine. I'm happy to share.
So are most of the emerging
Yeah. I'm taking pictures, but that'd be better.
That would just the little tough ones keep that part up because they're looking for something underneath.
Yep. So this is a good example. Yeah, no, that's a great question. So this emerger fly is basically you're gonna have anything. Have you guys heard of clink hammers? Clink hammers?
Yep.
Clink hammers, yes.
Yeah.
The
So
fly
the
clink hammer.
I'm sorry, the fly clink hammer is an emerger, and where the body will actually hang down like how that actual insect was doing before. And then their cuticle is kind of staying up, and that's what that fish sees, that it's trying to hatch and break open its cuticle in this area.
It's good as an enrichment.
Okay. And I apologize that there's no sound, but I can narrate this because I love this video. This is showing the hexagenia life cycle in real video. So hexagenia is a burrowing mayfly. It's got really feathery wings. They're feathery. A green drake. Or I don't know what you guys call it, an eastern green drake, maybe?
Yeah.
Green drake.
These are bigger.
So they're big. They have those tusks that help them burrow in the front. And they emerge almost all at the same time. It's pretty crazy. I'm sure you guys know about the great hatch, the hexagenia hatch. This was actually recorded on the Mississippi River, and so I was in undergrad. I was in La Crosse, right on the Mississippi River, and you'd see things like this. They'd hatch so big you would see them on the weather radar. So it would black out the weather radar as if it was a big storm, but it was a hatch of these guys. These are mayflies.
Aren't they great?
Yeah. We don't have those hatches here.
Not quite like that.
No. The Midwest is insane. They call them fish bugs, and they actually make the road slick and cause accidents. And they're stinky. They smell when they die, and they're rotten. Yeah, they're terrible.
So this is the
edges of all the Great Lakes.
that
Like
kind of
it's
hang in the
elementary
trees like
level.
that, and they'll molt.
But it's
So they're molting into another adult right now.
Right.
So it's molting into its second adult stage.
Oh, look at that.
And the reason why they're doing that is because when they first get out of the water, they want to get out of the water very quickly, and they have little hairs on their wings that help them push and repel the water. But now for flying, those hairs aren't very good for flying, so they have to molt again so that they can fly and do their mating courtship to be able to lay eggs. So that's why this is the only insect that does this.
And they actually get rid of their digestive system, and they don't eat when they
Yeah, so some of them don't even grow mouth parts. You're right.
They're just like sex machines.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're only there to reproduce and that's it.
That's crazy.
Somebody asked a question about the eggs and whether or not they float.
Yeah, that's a great question. So,
Whether or not they what?
Yeah, so the reason why most mayflies have to touch their abdomen to the water is to break that surface tension. So they have to push their eggs down. Some of them you'll see, if they just fly up and they don't hit their abdomen to the water, their eggs will float, depending on the species. So they like to go down and touch, but it also is a trade-off because then fish, that's usually when fish get them. So
Are the fish going for the eggs though?
mostly the adults.
Yeah.
Yeah, those eggs are very, very small.
So like if there was a hatch like that and they're coming down to break that surface tension and lay their eggs, and you really want to be trying to throw something that looks like the big adult.
Yeah, you'll want to do your spinner or a dun at that point. You can do either one. Is that still going on? Okay, good.
Is that like real? There's really a dragonfly that big?
Not anymore.
Huh?
Not anymore. So, okay, so we'll move on to the next one.
200 million years ago.
Oh, all right.
Does anyone have any other questions about mayflies? Otherwise, I mean, we can always go back to them at any time, too, if you think of something. But I'll move on to the order Odonata, which means the toothed ones. That is dragonflies and damselflies. So when we were talking about the mayflies, we were talking about 400 million years ago that they evolved. Now we're only talking 200 million years ago for the dragonflies and damselflies. And there was a 70 centimeter wingspan. It was called a griffin fly that resembled the first odonate. So that's a replica of how big that would be 200 million years ago. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it would carry small children off.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's various body forms of nymphs, as you can see.
Griffin fly.
And so the suborders for this is Anisoptera, Zygoptera, dragonflies, and damselflies. So they're both lumped in here. I'll mostly talk about dragonflies just because, like I said, I'm biased. That's what I use to measure the mercury. But wings apart, so very simply from this slide, all you need to get is that the adults, to tell the difference between a dragonfly and a damselfly, a dragonfly, when they land, their wings will be down and parallel to the ground. And when a damselfly lands on the ground, their wings will be back and together and up. So you can see how they're landing here. That's how you can tell the difference.
They're usually always together, aren't they?
What's that?
Dragonflies, aren't they always together? When I see them, they're always...
The wings? Or
the dragonflies
mating?
themselves, they're
Yeah,
always
definitely.
mating.
Definitely,
I
yeah.
rarely see one alone.
Yeah, they do a really cool wheel pattern. Yeah, absolutely. And so the reason why they're called Odonata is because they're the toothed ones. And the way that you can tell a dragonfly from any other nymph is that they have this lower hinged jaw. So it will actually shoot and catch their prey and bring it back to their mouth. I hope this works.
Oh, look at that. So that's their jaw, that's not a tongue.
No, that's
their
not.
jaw.
That's their lower jaw. So it kind of cups around their face like this, and then it'll go out, grab it. And most of them have really serrated. Oh, I forgot to pass these around. I hope no one's got food. These are two dragonfly larvae that I collected for my project. But if you look at their lower jaw, they have very, very serrated part, which is right here. And it looks like a whole bunch of knives that go together like this. And these are one of the most predacious dragonflies, so that will actually grab small fish and eat them. It's insane. Yeah. And so the reason why I talk about dragonflies is because a lot of people don't know that they actually really resemble a woolly bugger in the water. When they actually suck up water through their hind end, and that's how they breathe. They have gills inside of their abdomen. So when they expel that water, they're actually breathing, but then they can do kind of a jet propulsion, where if you're stripping a woolly bugger, it actually looks very similar to that in the water. So that's just one kind of scooting around at the bottom. Wow. You can kind of, you can kind of see. You can kind of see it. So like if you think that you're just kind of stripping small patterns, it can be really effective. You don't have to watch all of this, but it's pretty common. I wish and you guys can look up any of these videos, or like I said, if I send you the PowerPoint, you can watch them. But this is in New Zealand, so the commentary is fantastic.
Yeah.
And of course, like pump up music and all that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's a damselfly just flying around. So a lot of people don't talk about dragonflies and damselflies as adults when they talk about insects for fly fishing, because they're hard to mimic as adults because you have to kind of hover them over the water like that. They don't normally land on the water, but this is proof that they will eat them and that you can still fish them.
I tied a fly once with 2 of them because I see them fight a lot, and they slam the water when they fight. So with the 2 of them, and then I cast it and make sure it pops on the water, it demands attention for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So this keeps going for like 5 more minutes.
Go to the end, because that last shot is fabulous.
Go to the end?
No. You know what? Just if you watch all the way through this,
Yeah.
you know what happens at the end. Just watch it. I think it's worth it.
It's worth it? All right.
I know you've got other stuff to do.
No, it's fine.
Pretty cool.
So Megan, what do you think a fish sees? Do you know what a fish sees?
Watch what's happening. You see the line?
Oh, there's the line.
Does the fish see the pattern of the water changing? Does the fish see color?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That was good.
I believe that fish can see color. Some
really?
people say that fish cannot see color, so it doesn't matter what color an angler wears when they're walking.
Are they looking just in the
That's amazing.
of the splash? Or the
insect?
eye of the hatch?
I think that the number one thing that a fish is looking for is the outline of the insect. What does it look like as an outline? And the size. Does it match the size that's actually emerging right now? And I do think color would be a third. But I think if you think about shape and size for the first 2.
You've been studying the dragonflies. Can they survive in that aquatic stage through a drought? My dragonfly population went way down last year for the first time ever.
Yeah.
But we've had 2 years of pretty severe drought. And it worries me, right? The pond,
Wow, that really went.
The pond's full again, so I just wonder if chances are good, like frogs sometimes will wait out a drought.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's dependent on the species, because some species of dragonfly will emerge in 1 year, but then they'll have a lag time where you don't see them because they won't come and lay in the same spot. They'll maybe go to a few different vernal pools that will dry up quickly.
Showing up this year too, like different sizes.
It is different?
Dragonflies, yeah, or some of the big ones come. Yeah, there's a big one. And then there's all kinds of
These are the ones she's been collecting.
Yeah. That's very cool. Yeah, the majority of dragonflies will live for 2 years in the nymphal stage. So it could be that they,
They got to eat my black flies.
Yeah.
I count them for 2 years.
Aquatic stage, as a nymph. Yep. So we'll move on to the third order we'll talk about out of 5, Plecoptera, which is stoneflies. And now you have the evolution of folding wings. So as you're kind of going down, they're a little bit more recent. They can get be a little bit more specialized. And now the adults have these folding wings. And so the stoneflies, I'll try to be on top of my... So Plecoptera means braided wings, and I just told you why it means braided wings is because the adults can actually fold their wings now and keep them. It aids in protection, but I'm not really sure why they did this because they're terrible flyers. So it's the evolutionary trait made them to protect their wings, but their wings are really no good for flying. They're really clumsy. If you've ever seen them, they're kind of bouncing all over the place. They're not very aerodynamic. Again, just another tangent. But so the reason that, or the way that you can tell a stonefly is that they only have these two cerci, or these two tails at the end now. So mayflies will have 3, stoneflies will have 2, and they have gills on the thorax mostly, and 2 tarsal claws. But again, that's only if you're really looking underneath a microscope. So again, to tell the difference between stoneflies and mayflies, the tail is the big giveaway. So 3 tails versus 2 tails. So 3 tails, turn upside down, you get an M for mayfly. And you have gills on the abdomen of mayflies and gills on the thorax of the stonefly. These are just a few different flies that I have for the stoneflies. So again, it's going off that shape and matching the size and the shape. You can also go much simpler and do a Pat's rubber legs. This is a great fly, but that also imitates stonefly, the larger stoneflies. And then that's just a simulator that also can be mimicked as a stonefly.
Pat's rubber legs?
Pat's rubber legs, yep. And that's basically, you just take chenille and any kind of rubber legs really you have, or you can use, some people I've seen will use like a tinsel, just wrap that chenille around it and you're done. Really simple.
So we typically have 4 stoneflies that we pay attention to here, easternly. The Sallies,
Yeah.
the black, the yellow, and then the early black stones.
Okay.
I think that's, the stimmies are what I'm used to fishing for dry pattern stones.
So you guys don't use Pats up here?
No, because that's, you can tell that's more of actually I think it's west via Midwest bug. You can tell by the way it's designed.
Okay.
I don't see them as much, the nymph over there. I don't remember, ours are usually the coffin. I'm generalizing, I'm asking at the same time.
No, well, I know we've used the Pats, but usually darker colors.
Yeah.
Like an olive or a brown or black.
Awesome.
And I think the advantage to it is that it's easy to tie, and you're always going to be hooking up on the bottom because you want it right on the bottom.
Yeah.
When you tie those crazy stoneflies with a million parts,
Yeah.
and then you lose it.
Lose it, I know, yeah.
Whereas the Pats is
simpler.
Yeah.
I have a question about the legs.
Yeah, and that's a stimulator on
Does that matter? Do the legs have to be really?
Yeah.
I like that question. So Noam taught me that biology is, some insects are going to have a missing leg, some are going to have a bent leg, some are going to not. So it might not matter as much as you think it does. But a lot of people like to make them symmetrical, so it really is in preference, I think. I don't know if you have more to add on that.
The only thing I would add is a fly tire. I mean, when you're first starting to tie, you try to get as exact. But the reality is that in nature, your crippled or your off individuals are the first to be consumed. So I tend to capitalize on that now instead of worrying about getting it perfect.
No, did you say a stimulator is the stonefly adult?
Yep.
For a lot of dries and the way we tend to fish our rivers, yeah, the stimmies tend to work the best. And they come in the gamut of color of the flies that we tend to fish. It's one of my favorite dry fly patterns.
Moving on to the next few orders. These are the last 2, also the most specialized. because they're more recently evolved. So as they're more recently evolved, they have had time. They're not so prehistoric. So if you think about, you know, the older, more prehistoric and lessly adapted, really. And so as you get sooner, you have more adaptation, specializations. And so the Diptera or the true flies or the midges, and we'll talk about the Trichoptera, the caddisflies. And now these have a different life cycle. And again, just talking about specialization. So instead of having a hemimetabolous life cycle where they have those eggs to nymph to adult, they now have egg, larvae, pupa, and then adult. So just to kind of show you the schematic to compare it to the last one is you have this egg stage. You do still have your instar larval stages, but then the biggest difference is this pupa. And the reason they have this pupa is because, once again, they're more specialized, and this pupa goes into a dormant stage where some of them will actually go crawl up on land, and this is for Megaloptera, but some will come up on land, go underneath a rock, and they'll stay in this dormant pupa stage for it could be up to a few days. And the reason why they're doing that is because they're taking all of their energy they possibly can, and they're rearranging their body. They're going through metamorphosis to make themselves into a totally different adult. So if you think about, you know, this is a diatistic beetle, and the beetle that, the nymph looks drastically different from the adult. And so that pupa stage that's where all that energy is going to, is rearranging the body structures and the tissues and being able to create an adult that's really efficient to where it lives, really specialized to how it eats, and it's more specialized, I guess, over.
So it's kind of
overall.
like a Christmas for butterflies,
Yeah.
the way it's
Absolutely. They have the same, so they have this life cycle. So the butterflies are actually really closely related to caddisflies.
Wow.
Because of that. So it's the same chrysalis, same thing as the pupa stage as these guys.
So in the pupa stage, they don't have any wings or legs?
They have legs, but they're not very functional. And I'll show you pictures. I have pictures in the caddisfly part that'll show you some of the actual pupa. They have really long antennae that trail past them, and they kind of have little like swimming legs, but they're kind of just like derpy. Yeah. No wings though. Yeah. So we'll start with the Diptera. Di, obviously meaning two, and Optera, as with all the other orders, I forgot to mention, means wings, so 2 wings. And these guys are extremely diverse. You can find them nearly everywhere on the planet, because they're so specialized that they can live in different habitats. So they've found them in the coldest glacier-fed streams, scalding hot springs. In Washington, they found some papers just came out, the hot springs in Utah, and wastewater treatment plants. You think they're good for microbial breakdown. They can live anywhere. Wow. But the good thing about this is they have quick development rates, so they can withstand everything, but they develop really quickly. Good thing for us is that means they will hatch every day. You will always have a hatch of Dipteras every single day. So it just depends on if you know what that is or not, and it might be really, really small and hard to fish. But that quick development, like for example, a mosquito can lay eggs that mosquito can hatch in 24 hours. And that's why you get kind of these big blooms of some of these flies. So does anyone know what the top insect is? You guys are all Mainers. You should know.
Black fly?
We're close. That's a black fly larva.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, what about does anyone know the middle?
mosquito.
Yes,
larvae,
mosquito, yeah.
Wow.
And the bottom? The bottom are the same, just one's a cartoon and one's a real thing. That's a hard one. That's a crane fly.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
So just a close-up now that you all have your food. This is a black fly larva, and this is an actual picture underneath the microscope. It actually, so these black fly larvae have fans that are in the front of their mouth. They kind of look like, and they're like this, and so what they do is they filter feed out of the water, so these fans will move on their mouth, and it'll pick up small particles, and then they'll wipe it across their mouth. which is their mouthpieces right here.
Wow.
So these fans act like little collectors, and they'll sweep the food, the fine particles into their mouth. And then the mosquitoes. The cool specialization with these guys is on their hind end they actually have a siphon or a tube that they breathe out of. So that siphon in the top right is they actually stick that out of the water. They break the surface tension with it, and they're able to breathe atmospheric air. So you can see them. Yeah. Yeah. So they're usually in large pods like that up at the surface, and they'll use that siphon to breathe. Another reason why they can be nearly everywhere. They can be in tires, they can be anywhere because they can live as long as they can breathe that atmospheric air. They can be in a puddle. So that's why they're so persistent. And so if you're looking at these guys in the water, you go to a stream, you pick up some rocks. The number one thing, it's really hard to know if they're a diptera or not. Just if they don't have legs, it's a good guess that they're from the diptera family. Those are on the black fly larvae at the top. Those are considered pro legs. There's no joints in them, so they're like fleshy little nubs. And so, whereas with other worm-like caddisflies and stuff like that, you'll have more of these jointed legs that you can clearly see. Diptera have no legs and soft bodies. So, but they're very. I only showed you 3 of some very diverse ones. There's millions. There's tons. So the life cycle again, by the way, these life cycle images are from the Catch and the Hatch. It's a website. It's really good. I have the resource at the end as well, but they lay out a lot of life cycles really nicely for you. So,
can I add something?
Yep.
I was fishing last weekend, and we had a heavy nymph in the front, and we had a midge nymph. A teeny, tiny, like size 18 midge nymph on the back, and that's what caught the brown trout.
Wow.
And
that big one that you...
Yeah, that's what it was. And I mean, there was nothing hatching, but they were... And we launched it into the deepest part of the pool, so I think that the midge nymph kind of went right into the deepest place where the fish was hiding and bonked him on the head, and we took it.
Which one? The first one?
Yeah, the midge nymph.
Yeah.
It wasn't emerging. It was just a, it was just a red with a variegation.
Yeah.
On it. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, and really, I mean, the way that I tie them, the only thing that's different between the emerger here, honestly, this is a zebra midge with a little bit of white hair acting as the starting of a wing of that pupa stage. So you can get as fancy as you want with these emergers, really. Just some more examples. Like I said, diptera are super diverse, so you can have many different flies that will resemble something of that kind.
I think our most common midge fly is the snat, cluster.
Yep. Dry fly.
Yep.
So, some of the common ones, we went over a few of them. The non-biting midges is the common name for chironomids, or like your little red midges that a lot of people use, bloodworms. Tepulidae, which is crane flies, and you have your mosquitoes, your black flies, your horse flies, your deer flies, all of the flies that we hate. Most prevalent flies usually in the water. Just a fun fact that the common name of dipterans are